one of the main reasons why women attract men who are beneath what they deserve is because they normalize dysfunction. So if you've been following me, you will see that I made a post recently about the power of your language, right? And about how it's so important to speak into existence the things that you want to see. One thing that I constantly see is women doing the complete opposite of that. So they've had one bad relationship and maybe even two or three bad relationships. And now they're constantly saying things like men are trash, men are jerks, men are idiots, all men are cheaters. The Bible talks so much about how the power of life and death is in the tongue. And I can guarantee you that if you are constantly talking about men in a negative way, then you will keep attracting more men into your life who back up what it is that you're saying. You will attract more and more men who are cheaters, who are liars, who are whatever negative thing that you have to say about them. So, first of all, watch your language, watch what you're thinking, watch what you allow yourself to be surrounded by. If you've never personally had the experience of being with a man who's trash, but you're watching ratchet reality TV shows all the time where those men behave that way, then you're going to start getting that idea that that's how men are. And you're going to start attracting that into your life yourself. So watch what it is that you're feeding into your mind and into your spirit, and watch what it is that you're allowing to come out of your mouth. The other thing that I notice when it comes to normalizing dysfunction is, believe it or not, our mind is always trying to protect us, and it is always trying to keep us safe. Our minds will do whatever it is to make sure that our world doesn't get rocked. So what that has to do with attracting men who are not great quality, or this whole idea of normalizing dysfunction, is if you have had earlier experiences in your life that were dysfunctional. So whether this is in your childhood, you grew up in a home that was unstable, or you were bullied a lot at school, or you had issues with your siblings that were beyond just the normal, brothers and sisters make fun of each other and all that. You were in a seriously toxic relationship with them. Or when you first started dating as a teenager, you had one or two boyfriends who didn't treat you right. What happens is, with these early experiences, because they happen to us at younger ages, we start to normalize those. We start to feel like, hey, that's just the way things are. We start to feel like, oh, all people are like this. Back to that post that I made about the power of your tongue and watching what it is that you say. I used to think that there was no big deal about complaining. I would have an issue. I would go to a friend about it. I would go to a coworker and I would vent. And, I was like, okay, well, I vented. I got this off my chest. I can go about my day now. And I never saw an issue with that. Well, the problem is that I had gotten into environments where I was surrounding myself with complainers. And it's funny because I was in an environment where I surrounded myself with complainers, so it became normal for me. And I got to a point where I was like, this environment is toxic. I need to get away from this. Everyone's so unhappy. Everyone's so miserable. And I left and went into another environment that was full of complainers. And it was fine at first. Oh, we're just venting. It's okay. Everyone has bad days. And people listen when I have my complaints. I'll listen to their complaints. We're just doing each other a solid, right? And I would get to the point, this environment is so toxic. I need to leave. I don't know why people here are so miserable. And I would leave and I would find myself in another environment where I was surrounded by complainers. The problem is that I never changed. So my environments never changed. So I never got into a situation where I was actually happy. I never found myself in situations where I didn't feel bogged down and burdened by somebody else's toxicity, because I kept attracting what seemed to be normal to me. Complaining had gotten normal. Venting had gotten normal. And this is no different than being in a bad relationship. So if you're dating someone who isn't really paying attention to you, and as a child you had a parent who wasn't really paying attention to you because they were selfish, or even because they were busy and you didn't have a lot of money and they were constantly working, whatever the reason was for them not paying attention to you, you normalize that. And because that is normal, and in some aspects even comfortable to you, because remember, our brains don't like change. Our brains don't like anything that is suddenly jarring to us. So if you find yourself in that situation, then what happens is you start to attract more and more, not just men, people into your life who will often ignore you. If you grew up in a family full of relationships where there's constant fighting, then don't be surprised when you start finding yourself in those same relationships, because you're going to start to see that as normal. If you grew up in a situation where even if your family is normal, because I don't want this to be about, oh, poor me, I had a poor childhood. A lot of us had very hashtag blessed childhoods. A lot of us grew up in the traditional two-parent home and all of that. But let's say you have all of that and you grew up in a situation where you went to school and you had frenemies. If you've ever seen the movie Mean Girls, you know what I mean by that. You had these girls in your life who they were cool and they were popular and you hung out with them, but you knew that you couldn't trust any of those girls as far as you could throw them. If you ever found yourself in a situation like that, if that's the way that you grew up, then don't be surprised if your adult relationships are sort of the same way, where you date men and you may really like that man and you may think that that man is cool and certain aspects of your relationship are great, but there's a part of you that doesn't trust him as far as you can throw him, because that's the environment that you are used to being in and that you are comfortable in being in. So, what do you do when that is the case? You have to start reminding yourself, because not only is the power of the tongue important, but the power of your thoughts are also incredibly important. You have to start reminding yourself, this is not normal. You have to start telling yourself, this is not normal. This is not normal. You have to tell yourself what it is that you do want. I want a partner who is incredibly attentive and present. I want someone who communicates well. I want someone who, when we fight fair. We're able to actually handle our emotions. We're able to handle the way we speak to each other. We're able to each take criticism in love and actually work on it. You have to start telling yourself what it is that you do want, not what you don't want. And you have to start seeing that and finding ways to see that this type of healthy love is possible. Whether you have role models in your own life of what a healthy relationship looks like, if you don't have those in your own life, I understand. But then you need to find that on social media. You need to find that in a church. You need to get into a community group where there are couples who are happy and in love, and you can see what healthy love looks like. But you have to keep in mind that we don't just end up in great relationships because we want to. Like, that would be awesome, but it doesn't work that way. Again, our brain will always default to the things that are uncomfortable, or the things that are comfortable to us. So you have to start getting to a point where you make the things that you grew up with, that you know are toxic, that you know aren't healthy, you have to start making those uncomfortable. It's not enough to say, well, I don't like cheaters because, my mom cheated on my dad, or I don't like cheaters because I was in a relationship where someone cheated on me. If you were in those relationships, or if you saw those relationships long enough, there's a part of you that thinks that that is normal. You have to start seeing examples of, this couple has been married for 30, 40, 50 years and there's no cheating in that relationship. I know that those relationships exist. I know those relationships are possible. And I know that those relationships are meant for me, because God is not a tease. So when he puts desires in my heart, I am meant to truly have those desires. So stop making your dysfunction, stop making your trash, stop making your issues normal. And if you're in a situation where you have a certain issue and you go to a girlfriend of yours who you know also has that issue, the two of you need to stop talking about it all the time. Don't make that a normal part of conversation either. Instead, talk about, as Corinthians says, whatsoever is good, whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is lovely, keep those things on your lips.